Hey, I'm John Cannell, and today on Preppy Kitchen, we're making some irresistibly delicious pretzel bites. So let's get started. First off, into the bowl of my stand mixer, I'm adding 1.5 cups or 360 mils of warm water, between 110 and 120 Fahrenheit. To the warm water, I'm adding 1/4 ounce packet of active dry yeast. You never know if something's gone amiss and your yeast has died in the package, so we're gonna wait for it to bloom before we do any more steps. If your yeast doesn't bubble up, start over again because your bread will not rise. But to make these yeast nice and happy and give them some pep in their step, I'm adding 1.5 tablespoons of light brown sugar. Give it a stir, and we'll set this aside for 5 minutes. When we come back, it's gonna be frothy and all bubbled up. My yeast is all frothed up, nice and healthy, so now it's time to add 3 cups or 360 grams of all-purpose flour right into my bowl. These pretzel bites, by the way, are so delicious. They're like soft and buttery on the inside, but crisp and salty, golden brown on the outside. It's like a perfect snack. And just like that, perfect, 360 exactly. I also want to add 2 teaspoons of salt, just sprinkle that in. And for some added richness, 2 tablespoons of melted butter. This is unsalted. It's time to give this a mix, so add a paddle attachment onto your stand mixer and mix it on low just about a minute until it's nice and shaggy, and then we're gonna switch to a dough hook. All right, that looks shaggy enough to me. If you don't wanna switch attachments, which I totally understand, you can mix this with a dough whisk. Mix by hand until it's nice and shaggy, and then pop on your dough hook. I'm gonna give this a quick scrape down, just to make sure nothing's lurking underneath. Now it's time for that dough hook. So you might be looking at this dough and thinking, my gosh, this does not look like a normal shaggy dough. This is very watery indeed. Like, what is this nonsense? It is watery because we have not added all the flour yet. Depending on the humidity, the weather, what the magical unicorn says, you will need different amounts of flour every time you make bread. There's no perfect recipe for everyone. So we added a little bit now, and we're gonna add the rest in a bit at a time until the dough comes together and I'm happy with the way it looks. So I want 1 3/4 cups of flour, 1.75 times 120, 210 grams of flour. Totally using math every day in the kitchen. Okay, we're gonna mix this on low now and add the remaining 1 3/4 cups of flour, 1/4 cup at a time. Your cue is to see that the dough is pulling away from the bowl. After that, you can stop adding flour. This is definitely one of those times where the weather can affect how much moisture is getting pulled in and how much flour you need. I use a scale, so I always know exactly how much flour is going into a recipe. If you're using a measuring cup, I encourage you to fluff up the flour, sprinkle it into your measuring cup, level it off, and that's gonna be almost correct. It'll be very close. So if you're using measuring cups, you definitely wanna add the flour a bit at a time so the recipe comes out just right. Nobody wants a dry, bready pretzel bite. My dough's been mixing for a while, and let's take a look. It's definitely pulling away from the bowl. I have a lot of flour left over still, but I want to take a look inside. So on the outside, it feels fairly dry. It is so very wet on the inside. I'm going to continue adding some flour a little bit at a time. You might also notice the texture is really rough and the dough just pulls apart. It's not stretching nicely. That's because the gluten hasn't been formed properly yet. Back to mixing and adding flour we go. So on low, sprinkling in the flour. Right now I have about 1/3 of a cup left over. I'm gonna stop, because I think that's about right, and let this mix for about 5 minutes. I really wanna develop the gluten, get a beautiful soft texture, and also have some wonderful stretchiness. That's where that wonderful chew you get in a perfect bread comes from. It's that nice gluten giving you some pull. Let that mix, do some dishes, and we'll be right back with the magic of editing. My dough's been mixing for about 4 or 5 minutes, and I want to give it a test. So, turn the mixer off, grab some with your, oh, there's all this flour on top here. Okay. Flour your fingers lightly and let's give it a stretch. I want to see the dough stretch into a beautiful translucent pane that light can pass through. Translucent. That's why it's called the window pane test. This is much better than it was, but it's breaking a little too soon, so I'm going to give it about 90 seconds more. Back to mixing. A minute or so later, it's time to take a look and see if the dough will pass the window pane test. A little flour for your fingers, and much better indeed. It really has a nice stretch and isn't breaking. I'm gonna transfer this to a bowl, but first, I wanna be real with you and tell you what's going on in this mixer. Ugh. So in the mixer, some of the dough is getting mixed up really well, and some of it's kind of just hanging out and not getting evenly kneaded. When I did the window pane test, there's some parts of the dough I can grab, so stretchy, so amazing, and there's some parts that are a little bit disappointing, if I'm gonna be honest. So if that happens to you, just grab the dough and knead it for like 1 minute on the counter. You actually can do a really great job kneading the dough. You can see it's not really ultra sticky, but it's a little sticky, which is exactly the right amount of flour. So here, nice and stretchy. Okay, once you're satisfied, then you can go on to the next step. This is like the extra Virgo thing to do though. It's gonna be delicious even if it's unevenly kneaded all the way through. Grab a large bowl and we're gonna add about a tablespoon of oil so it's nice and slippery. Use your fingers just to work the oil up the bowl. Now, grab this beautiful piece of dough you worked so hard on, transfer it to the bowl, and just move it around so it's evenly coated with the oil. You do not want the dough to dry out, and the oil is here to protect it. Cover your bowl with a damp towel. We're gonna let this rise for about an hour in a warm place until it's doubled in size. Then it's time to make those delicious pretzel bites. About an hour later, I now have a monstrously giant lump of dough. So here's the deal. Set your oven to 425 and add about 3 quarts of water to a large pot and bring it to a boil. While everything's heating up, we're gonna prep our dough to make our delicious pretzel bites. Lightly flour your work surface. We're gonna dump our dough out. Divide your dough into 4 equal portions. Don't stress about getting it totally perfect. These are pretzel bites. It is not millefeuille, so it doesn't have to be totally perfect. We're gonna roll these into nice, beautiful 22-inch long rolls. Be gentle with your dough. I like to use gravity to assist, and then do some rolling. And if your dough is really wet, go ahead and add a little sprinkle of flour, but just don't add too much because that dries everything out. Okay. Soft pretzels are delicious if they're homemade. I actually do not like them at all if they're store-bought or from a vendor, but if I make them, that's a different story. Then they're delicious and amazing. Okay, that looks nice. I'm gonna guesstimate that to be about 22 inches. Just roll the remaining dough logs out and then we'll get to cutting. Now use a bench scraper and cut these into 1.5-inch pieces, although if you want giant pretzel bites, have at it. The cut gives them that signature pillow look, so it's very important. Everything's all cut and my water has come to a boil, so now we're gonna boil these up in a signature bath of baking soda. You want 1/4 cup of this and make sure to stir it in slowly. If you just dump this baking soda in, it could overflow and bubble and make a huge mess. So nice and slow, and then we're gonna boil these in batches, and this baking soda bath gives that signature golden brown exterior, so it's very important. Our lid comes off. Now carefully and slowly just, oh, see, that's what we're talking about. Slowly add that baking soda in. Plop your pretzels in. Just add them in one at a time, not in a giant clump so they don't stick together. They only boil for about 30 seconds, so use your spider or slotted spoon and just bounce them around so they get evenly coated. I like to make sure they flip at least once. And after 30 seconds, we're going to fish them out, and they get placed right onto that baking sheet. Just give them a little bit of space in between. Okay. These guys are so close to going into the oven, but first we want an egg wash. So 1 egg, a small bowl, and I'm just gonna whisk this up. The baking soda gave you this beautiful golden finish once they're in the oven, because the baking soda changes the pH of the dough and affects the starches, and also like gives you the color and that crisp texture on the outside. But we're gonna help things along with an egg wash. Even more gloss, even more color, and also the egg wash will help the salt stick. Okay, just brush the tops. Then we're gonna pour salt on top. Grab some coarse sea salt or sea salt flakes if you're being fancy, and we're gonna sprinkle liberally over the tops. However much salt you want is the right answer. So if you like it extra salty, add extra salt. I had a friend in college who loved salt so much that her boyfriend got her a salt lick for her birthday one year. She did take a couple licks of it. Anyways, these are ready to go into the oven, 425 for 15 to 18 minutes, or until they're a deep, beautiful golden color. Then it's time to dip and taste. In you go. Oh my gosh, it's a crisp exterior, beautiful golden color, but on the inside, the softest, softest bread pillow ever. These are the perfect vehicle for any dip, but today a sweet, spicy mustard. That is so good. I hope you get a chance to try this recipe, and if you like this video, check out my bread playlist.